Hello and welcome to tonight's live stream. Right, so it's a quick tech test. Can everybody hear me? Obviously you can see the microphone in front of me. Are we on live? That's all I need to know. If everybody can hear me, that's great. I'll just wait for a response in the chat. Everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming on to the chat. All the people that's in the chat tonight, welcome everybody to the show. So it's welcome everybody from the UK and around the world to the Paul Sinclair's Truth Proof channel. Surprise guest on tonight, as you probably noticed by the banner. It was a last minute guest, and the guest was really good enough to come on at the last minute, and I'm sure you'll find him interesting. So let's go through the chat box and see who's in there today. And don't forget, by the way, we have Skyflower who's doing the moderating. She does a great job every week, and she won't stand for any funny business. All questions, please, in caps for Paul and his guest. Let's have a look. We've got Ferdinand Goglia. Welcome to the show, Ferdinand. Corey, Joan Thomas, nicknames Stargazer Eternal. Welcome to the show. Rod, Alison Buttle, Patricia Adams Wright, Ian Slater. Great to have you here. Simon Riley. Let's have a look. I'll probably... Bob's in tonight. Welcome, Bob. Is it Bob? Yeah, I think it's Bob. Cat Mother, Steve Trees, Tam, the disabled Welshman. I don't know who that is, but well, yes, I thought so. Michael Park, good evening. And Mick, let's have a look. We have Rebecca King and Ian Linford, and there's lots and lots more of you, which I really appreciate you coming onto the stream. So Jessica's in tonight, and of course, if you read the banner, Jessica did the title music for the Truth Proof shows. Without further ado, I think we'll run with our little promo, if I can get that up and running, and see you back in a second. Wow, a great intro if I've ever seen one. Right, I'm going to bring Paul on, who'll introduce tonight's guest. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Les. And here we are again, Truth Proof. Another week soon come round. We've had a few sightings this week on the cliff tops, which is a shame because the Winter Hill crew came and visited last week, and it were pretty flat. Nothing happened, but that's the way of things. And we'll probably just touch on these sightings a little bit in a few minutes. But as I say, special guest tonight. We're speaking with Dean Cooling, and this is more of a starter really for Dean's sighting stroke experience that he's going to talk about in a few weeks. But nevertheless, I think Dean will be his opinions and views on the state of the ufology and cryptids will be valid tonight in what we've got to talk about. And he's also got his own theory regarding the Dyatlov Pass incident, just something he's been looking into. So, Dean, welcome to Truth Proof.
Evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Yeah, all good, Dean. Yeah, so we can come to your thoughts and theories on Dyatlov Pass in a while. If anybody wants to fire any questions in block capitals, remember, people, we're not experts. We're all sort of testing the waters here and throwing our ideas and thoughts about everything's theory. The experts don't exist, in my opinion. So let's just jump to Hull sightings. November the 8th, which isn't long ago, the Old Daily Mail featured some sightings about a lady who'd seen some unusual lights in the sky. Why do I find that interesting? Because I got a call, myself and Bob Brown were going to go up to the cliff tops. We were going to mix it up a bit. We were going to go up at 10 o'clock till about 1 in the morning. I get a call at 6 o'clock to say there's a guy at Hummonby and he's looking at 7 orange spheres out at sea with his wife, with his partner. Adam, they call him. He might even come in chat. I don't know. It might prompt him to come in. The 7 orange spheres switched off and became 3. Then he sees another 7 orange spheres, and as he's looking from Hummonby, and we know it's all relative because it's difficult to say at that, it's dark or just about dark. It's about 6 o'clock at night, and he sees 7 orange spheres above the cliffs, and he's estimating between Bempton and Flamborough. But from Hummonby, they could have been they could have been closer or further away. It's difficult to say. But I find it fascinating that the newspapers, the local papers, don't get absolutely tons and tons of UFO reports. But on the night that they do get an unusual object seen in Hull, around 6 o'clock, just before 6, this lady said, we've got these sightings over Bempton, Flamborough and Speeton. Brilliant. Well, there's another sighting to accompany 20 that goes back to 2020 of 7 lights on the cliff tops. There's a guy contacted me. He rang me up actually in early hours at morning to tell me that he sat in his father's living room overlooking which windows that overlook the sea, and he can see a row of lights on the cliff tops at Bempton, but above the cliffs, orange spheres. And as he's put the binoculars on them, they're oval in shape. I mean, I don't take binoculars out with me. I take cameras out. Maybe I should, but you can't hold everything. I did go last night. Bob were doing a radio show, so he didn't come up with me because we've been going up just about every night. I went last night and I went at 4 o'clock and I stayed while 8. Sometime after 7, 2 of these lights appeared, literally just exploded and imploded as quick as that. I don't think they're playing games. It was just, and I couldn't get them on film. I don't know what your views are on these lights, Dean.
I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, Paul. When I think of these lights recently, I've been seeing or trying to figure out the similarities between those and the lights that you get often seen with Bigfoot reports. I don't know if you're aware of this or not.
Yeah.
With quick reports, there's always, well, not always, but there seems to be quite a high tendency, especially with the Bigfoot, for them to be seen. At first, I used to think there was possibly ball lightning and something like that, and it's just coincidental. But now I've learned more about it and I've read more about it. I can't really say it's what it is, but it's definitely not ball lightning. I can tell you more about what it's not, I feel, rather than what it is. It's fascinating. I think personally, I feel it's something that needs to be looked at a lot more because it's the only thing that I know that has a crossover. As you just mentioned, you've got the UFOs. I do apologize. I keep forgetting the new terminology that you have to use, the unidentified life forms.
UFOs will do.
Yeah, the UFOs. And then you've got the Bigfoot sightings where these balls are seen. And from what I can gather, they look exactly the same. The only problem there, though, is that, for example, what you are seeing out at sea, that's got to be possibly miles away. And I doubt that something that's in these Bigfoot reports are going from the size of a golf ball up to somewhere the size of a beach ball. I don't think you'd probably see that out at sea, but they seem to be the same structure.
They must be fairly big, Dean, or they're a lot closer than we think. I mean, the ones that were reported on the 8th, and I didn't see them, Adam saw them, and I don't think they don't sound in description same as what the lady in Hull saw. But I just find it ironic that we've got 2 sightings just before 6 o'clock on the same date, 35, 40 miles apart. But they were seen out at sea, then on the cliff tops, above the cliffs. And I mean, light form phenomena and Bigfoot, I don't know. As I've sort of banged on about a few times, myself and Lee Haywood, we saw the huge sphere of orange light on the cliffs on November the 14th, 2019. And there were a cryptid sighting on November the 12th, 2019, which we found out afterwards, literally a mile and a half down the coast, and we got to speak to a witness a couple of times. And as I say, it was a first-hand sighting of the sphere of light that me and Lee had. So, is there a connection? And you know, is it something within the makeup of the land? I don't know. I don't necessarily think that these things are accompanying the cryptid. I just think that when things are unfolding, when things are happening, there's a lot more unexplained phenomena active, should we say. It's kind of enabler. But once again, pure speculation. Probably people in chat have got a better idea or take on this than me or yourself, Lee. Sorry, Dean.
That's okay.
I'll call you
call me Lee if you want to.
So, you know, I can see there's questions already, but we'll go to some questions in a bit. But do you want to throw a few of your ideas out about Dyatlov Pass?
Yep, okay, no problem, Paul.
First of all, Dean, sorry to cut across you, we need to give people a little outline of what this was, because some people in chat might not have heard of it. A lot might know more than others as well. Okay,
no problem. It's a place called Dyatlov Pass where an incident happened. You'll have to excuse me if I'm looking down. My memory's awful, so I have to write some notes down. And it was between the 1st of February 1959 and the 2nd of February 1959. It was 9 people were involved. They were all students at the Ural Polytechnics Institute, and they headed into the Ural Mountains. One of the group became ill after a short while and returned back. To cut the long story short, they went missing. People hadn't heard from them. When eventually search parties left and found them, they were found in very strange circumstances. These were all people that had, at the very least, a good basic knowledge of true, genuine mountain craft. And I don't mean just knew, you know, there's the path there and you've got to do this. They knew how to read maps very well. They knew how to use a compass and a map, how to step out, how far away you are. They were very experienced, shall I say, for that period of time in the, you know, late 1950s, early 1960s. When they did find the bodies, or when the government, the soldiers, the searchers, whoever was searching for them, when they found the bodies, it says that 6 of them had died from hypothermia. This is what the autopsies found. 2 of them from physical chest trauma, and 1 of them died of a fractured skull. But ultimately, the ruling of why they died is they were killed by a compelling natural force. What a compelling natural force is, I don't know. I don't know what you can put that to, which, if I'm honest with that in itself, compared to it seems very open-ended.
Yeah.
If you want, you could fit anything into that. Is that on purpose, or is that just a genuine thing? I don't know. You could take many routes on it. So that's basically what happened, and there's lots of theories that have gone round. I think quite recently, I think about 2017, I think it was, or something like that, they reopened the case to have a look into it again. And I believe the most generally held belief that most people believe is that there was some sort of an avalanche, and they've tried to flee this. They've had no choice, and because they've fled this avalanche, they were all asleep, hence no clothes on. I haven't read anywhere, but I remember watching a TV program where they said one of them was found at the base of a tree, and there was evidence of a very small fire. So it sounds to me like they darted off in different ways, because it's blind panic. You can imagine waking up in the middle of the night, it's blowing a gale anyway, and anybody who's been in a tent, when it's blowing a gale, it's noisy. So you're woken up, you're disorientated, and you're running for your life, literally running for your life in your underwear. And they found that 1 or 2 of them probably survived the avalanche itself. That's why it will explain why you've got some with physical chest trauma. However, what it doesn't explain is, I think we spoke earlier, Paul, just before we started, is there was things like 1 of them had their tongue missing. Another one of them, it says altogether there's 4 of them that displayed soft tissue damage. Another one had their eyes removed. And this isn't my take on it. This is what I read.
Well, there's actual online. There's photographs as well.
Yes.
Of these unfortunate people that are out there. And didn't they say, I don't know how they worked it out, but they thought that they'd exited the tent from the, obviously if we were inside a tent, we'd go from the inside out, but they'd ripped the way out of the tent.
Which is strange. I find that very peculiar. You know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure people in the chat could correct me, but that period of time, I'm sure tents were usually made out of some sort of cotton. Now, if it was made from cotton, then you'd have to add something like wax to it, Egyptian wax, sorry, Egyptian cotton, and wax it like barber jackets.
Yeah.
Now, if I don't know if you've ever held onto a barber jacket, I have. Try
tough.
tearing one of those.
Yeah.
You try even cutting them with a knife.
Yeah.
The tough old things. It doesn't make sense. Why go through a wall when there's a door there? The door's back then, but you just tie them shut. It doesn't make sense. But yes, so the general health consensus is roughly that's what happened. There was some sort of avalanche. Now, this is, I've got to say for everyone that's watching, this is what I'm about to say is just a theory that I'm putting forward for people to look into if they want to. But it's something to me that I feel it seems more likely or more realistic than some of the other cases have been put forward. Because we mentioned the Bigfoot. Now, I might get shot down for this. Have you seen the photo? They allege that there's a photo of black and white photo, and they say it's a Bigfoot that was following them. To me, that looks like someone in a cagoule. It's been in a blizzard, the hood's up, they're trying to keep warm, and they just wave into the camera. That's what it looks like to me, but, that's just my take on it. However, could I talk about something else that was going on that I feel is linked to it? Right. I don't know if anybody in the comment sections heard of this, but the Russians were making a machine called a battle mobile. They officially referred to as subterranes. Hence, they're on the lines of a submarine. You've got submarines in water, subterrane, terrain goes underground. These are vehicles invented, again, I'm sorry if I'm looking down, I have to refer to my notes.
Okay, it's all right.
This was invented by a gentleman called A. Trebelev. And this was in the 1930s when he first came up with the ideas. The basic principle of it is you would have to be nuclear powered because of the amount of heat and power that's involved. The tip of this battle mole would be heated at somewhere between 1,300 and 1,700 degrees centigrade. I don't know how you manage to keep the metal together there. I'm sure there's people in the chat that will know. But it would then melt the rock. And it would force its way through, and as the rock passes over, apparently it will turn to some form of glass, and so it will leave a perfect tunnel behind it, and it has tracks running on each side. So if you were to look at it from behind, you'd see a cross pattern, essentially, of tracks on four corners. Sorry, Paul, did you see
references to this online that people can
these are things, yes, I didn't write the references down, but this is not hard to find. This is hard to find. Literally, you only have to Google battle mobile and you'll start getting links appearing up. Where was I? Yes, it was invented in the 1930s and it became public knowledge in 1964. The Russian president or the Russian scientists, whoever it is, they made it public knowledge and announced to the public, this is what we've got. It was the Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, I believe his name is. He had insisted on it being speeded up because they wanted to use it. Now, the bit that interests me, which I'm getting to, they performed tests on this vehicle. It was never actually used in battle or in anger, as they would refer to, because it had problems with the nuclear engines and all the nuclear power in it breaking down and the meltdown. Between 1958 1963, they were carrying out tests of this vehicle in the Ural Mountains, little over a mile away from where this Dyatlov Pass incident took place.
Right.
Now, when they launched their investigations into how it melted down, they found that the people obviously that were inside it were vaporized instantly. It's essentially like a small atomic bomb going off. But soldiers that were outside showed they had high impact injuries, so chest problems, collarbones popped, ribs popped from the impact, the pressure wave, and they had lots of soft tissue damage. There was one or two cases of people, their eyes literally exploding from the pressure, eyelids being taken off. I've only written so much down, but I feel personally that this, to me, sounds, when you put it next to this Dyatlov Pass thing, is it possible that whilst they were testing this, because it's public knowledge, this is on record, 1958 to 1963. Well, the Dyatlov Pass incident was in 1959, so they'd been testing it for a year by this point. And if it's only a year old, it's in its infancy, so it's more likely to break down, things to go wrong. I feel that it's a good possibility, I'm not saying it's definite, but it's a good possibility that was it one of these, and that's why it was dealt with the way it was. There was talk of the military being involved. Some places have denied that, others have said yes, but there was talk of military being involved. And when you look at the injuries that these people had, given, I will accept that the tongue's missing, that I can't explain that, hence why I'm saying this is something to look into, but they displayed, I feel, all the injuries that were also mentioned in these investigations of when this Batamol, the subterrane, exploded. And there's 3 different times this happened, Paul. And it's
Yeah.
such a nuclear generator inside exploded.
So I think it's as plausible as anything that's been put forward, really, Dean. I mean, I had seen years ago the photograph that you're talking about, and yeah, could be somebody in some heavy winter clothing at distance.
Yeah.
And is it? I might be wrong here. The native. I read the book ages since Mountain of the Dead. I think it had got a lot of. I wouldn't say UFO activity, but light form, strange lights were seen around it. So it all helps build the mystery and the sort of mystique of the area up. And when they found these unfortunate people with these absolutely devastating life-ending injuries, people have jumped on to the fact that, yeah, this is probably alien related or Bigfoot related. But just because we're doing a truth proof live stream and we talk about unexplained phenomena, we'd be doing this case an injustice if we didn't talk about possibilities of like what you're discussing. And I hope we get a few sort of questions in chat about it, you know, and their views on it. I mean, there may be people that's a lot better read than me and you.
Oh, without doubt, yes, yeah. But it's one that, as I said, and you put it perfectly, Paul. I feel it's something that can't be ignored. That's to be looked into. And like these were big vehicles. If I read out, they were 12 foot in diameter, 75 foot long. 75 foot. Carried a crew of 5 and could carry 1 ton of cargo, and they moved at between 4 to 8 miles per hour. Now, the one it mentions in the first accident, it was 10 miles underground, and when it exploded, it caused movement of the mountain. Could it be one of these has emerged? I would be terrified if I'm sitting in my tent and suddenly a mechanical thing. Bear in mind, this is the 1950s.
Yeah, well, you would
never seen
if that suddenly appeared, wouldn't you?
Yeah, comes out to the side of the mountain and explodes.
Yeah.
You know, there's mention, I've heard a few times, and I'm sure I've read it somewhere, again, the chat might correct me on this, but I'm sure I've read that the people from the Dyatlov blast incident, there's mentioned radiation on their bodies.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, you know, that one of the side products or byproducts, horrible things about nuclear blasts, nuclear bombs, is radiation. And it mentions it in these investigations that took place in 1959. Is that correct? 1964, sorry. The last time, the 1964 went public, but it was very quickly shut down because there was 3 separate incidents and all of them were nuclear meltdowns. We all know that, unfortunately, and this isn't the Soviet people in general, I've got to say this, I'm not saying Russian people, but at that time, the Russian government, like all governments, and like a lot still are, you wouldn't get the truth out of them. They'll only tell you a narrative that they want to tell you. You know, it's always the winners of the battle that get to write history. And it's the same here, you know, so I thought I'd mention it, Paul, because I think it's something that maybe people who are a lot more capable than me, someone like yourself, Paul.
Well, no, I think it's a great take on it, Dean. And when we spoke earlier, and you know, and for the listeners, I'm wanting Dean to come on in a few weeks' time, a month's time, to talk about something that he's experienced, and I think this is a good way in. You'll know whether you feel comfortable to talk about it, Dean, basically, and. I think that's a good enough way. I know we're going to get people saying, "Oh, what did he see?" We're not going to do that tonight. Some people might already know, but yeah, it's brilliant, Dean. And one other idea, I suppose, with these, I wouldn't say precision, but what look like surgical cuts on the tongue and other body parts. If it's radiation, body parts could have been taken to measure the radiation. I don't know. You know?
And if you're taking a sample, what you're going to go for? Something that you can easily get to quickly, soft tissue, and cut it off. Tongue's a perfect thing.
Yeah, I saw Pat in the chat. She it's not so much a question, but she thinks the same. It could have been somebody in heavy clothing, the alleged Bigfoot. You see, we all want it, myself included. We all want it to be unexplained phenomena.
I'd love for it to be, Paul.
Yeah, I stood on them cliff tops last night, 4 hours. and you're not praying for it to happen, but you're really wanting it to happen. There's no fun in standing in that darkness on your own. You know, cameras set up, knowing you're potentially ruining camera with moisture in air, but you're wanting it to happen. But unfortunately, 99.9% of time, it's going to have a natural explanation.
Yeah,
and
we don't get to decide when it's going to happen either.
Yeah, we've had a brilliant sighting in today. Well, historical sightings that were sent to website where Don's put them on today. So truthproof.uk, if you want to read these, a guy called Ron, I'll not say his surname, and he sent us some of his observations and his parents' sighting and his brother's sighting, who were a skeptic. And I won't go into them in detail because I'd have to digest them and sort of look at them, but I have read them. And there's one which I find interesting, because the guys who was with us last week, who investigated Winter Hill, there's one from Winter Hill, 1980. And, you know, I thought, what a coincidence, you know, and he's given us this sighting. It's there on the website, and it's from a non-believer. It's from a complete skeptic, this guy's brother, and he saw a large rectangle that were a blue to purple colour. And you having a beer, Dean?
I'm having a little drink of Monster. I've got terrible kidney stones at the moment. Terrible kidney stones, and I haven't slept properly for about 4 days now. So
yeah, I realised you've not been great.
Powering through with caffeine.
Yeah, it just keeps you going. But yeah, so we got a Winter Hill sighting that the Winter Hill crew might want to pick up on. They came up at the weekend, 14 of them.
Wow.
To sort of get a feel of what's happening at Bempton.
Yeah.
Experienced practically nothing. But that's the nature of it. And they know that. And, you know, as a group of people, I should imagine it were a good weekend. Myself and Bob went and visited them twice in evening. And Alison, who's in chat, were in, and you know, a few others that are in chat now, you know, and yeah, it were good. It's good to meet like-minded people, and as I say, they weren't blown away by a satellite that flew across the sky and just seeing everything as some kind of alien visitation. So it were interesting, but they saw nothing. And which, unfortunately, we've had these sightings, haven't we, later on in the week? And I should imagine, just the way of things, that we might have a few more now. It just seems to peak and then just go flat for you know, quite a while. But I don't know. I don't know what your views are on the former job that you used to do, Dean. And did you have any sightings or get any sightings from that job from other officers?
If I'm honest with you, Paul, not really. I can. Do you want me to mention what I did for a living?
That's up to you.
I'm not bothered. Okay,
I've dropped it in, so I suppose you can. Yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
I've dropped it in there, so I suppose.
I was a police officer in the Met Police, and my main role when I was there was what is currently SCO19. Before that, it was CO19. Before that was SO19. Before that was PT17. I won't keep going. And after over a decade of doing that, I then transferred to my home county's force, which I won't mention because I haven't got much good to say about them. Okay. And I'll leave to that with them if you don't mind.
No, that's good.
All I'll say is that you will probably find, Paul, that most police officers I worked with have exactly the same thoughts and feelings about stuff like everyone here does. Police officers, I've just got to say, first of all, I didn't join the police. It was never my job. People used to be quite surprised when they'd say, "Oh, I always wanted to be a policeman." I never did. I didn't want to. I was working as a bouncer at a nightclub in the 90s. And a friend of mine knew that I liked reading, so handed me a book by a gentleman called Steve Collins, who I later met because he was on one of the other teams. And it was called The Good Guys Wear Black. And it says something along the lines of Scotland Yard's secret elite terrorism unit. And I read that and I thought, I want a bit of that. My dad had made me promise by this point that I wouldn't join the military because all my family are military. And it wasn't for bad things, but the long and short is he felt I was cannon fodder, and he said, "I know what you like. You'll end up doing certain jobs, and you'll be in places you shouldn't be. And if you get there left on your own, you're in trouble." Anyway, So I read that book and I thought, God, I want to do some of that. And a couple of years later, I was there doing it. But yeah, down here, there were reports came in down here where I am. I'm going to have to say where I am in Gwent. There was regularly stuff would come in for the Monmouth area around Hinton, but that was for big cat sightings. You'd get some big cat sightings. There was a young lad in the 90s, I think it was Catbrook. I think it was Catbrook where he said where he lived, and he alleged that he was scrammed by a panther. And then I think the national papers picked it up and ran with it. And he actually had scratch marks on his face. He says he was playing in a park. There's a little park in this village. And he saw what, I think he saw what he believed was a dog in a bush, a black Labrador. He went over to pet it, and it was a large black cat that scrammed him. The only problem with it was some people pointed out that, you know, all big cats, if they scratch you, it's not going to give you a little... It's going to take your face off. And these were literally, looked like more like a cat scratch, but given to the lad, they were widely spaced apart. It certainly wasn't a domestic cat that did it. Was it a panther? I don't know.
It's interesting. Do you know, very close to where we've been, one of the areas where we've been doing filming for Wolflands, and you've been, Dean. You've actually, I mean, there's dedication for you. Dean's travelled from Wales to spend a night with us in the forest. But what I'm saying is, myself and Les, we bumped into two lady farmers while we were doing a bit of filming, probably a couple of years ago. They were curious to what we were doing in a remote area. We told them they'd not heard any of these reports of the cryptids, but they'd heard about the big cats. And they must have had some land. I think Les might correct me. I think it were up around Arwood Dale. And the younger one, who'd been in her 50s, said she was tending to the sheep one day on a bit of an hillside where there's gorse, you know, the thorny kind of green plant with the yellow flowers. And they're just doing what she's doing. And she just looked and saw two huge paws sticking out of the gorse.
Wow.
And she had a look. There's its head there, and it's a panther. You know, and quite a matter of fact, she's telling us this story. I don't think I used to think there was a supernatural element or a paranormal type element to some of these, and maybe there is at times, because I'm contradicting myself again. Short Lane keeps throwing these big cat reports up, and it's a mile long, and there's nothing but fields either side of it in a single track road. Why are we getting cat sightings there? But I think everybody knows that they're here.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you've had your own sighting, Dean. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I can't say again. I can't say definitely, Paul. But I went when I was in Gwent Police. I became aware. This took place before I was in Gwent Police. But once I'd gone to Gwent Police, I became aware of where the most things are sighted. And I was on a hill there's a place called Blenavon. And on the top of there is a lake called the Keeper's Pond. You know, I used to regularly go up there. I like wild camping. And because I've got PTSD, I've found it that for some reason, when I'm out somewhere, I'm out like a light bulb. Here, I barely sleep. So I'd gone camping. It was about mid-October, started snowing quite heavily. And as I was walking, this area is open, it's moorland, and the path's got lots of rocks. And I just happened to look across to my right, and I thought it was someone's dog. And this was about half an hour. I thought, oh my God, someone's Labrador is up here. And I was looking for the owners. As I'm walking, I'm still walking, I'm just glancing across, and I've got a headlight on, it's shining. So I look across, I thought, this lab is in the, is it called bulrush? I can't remember the plants. Like
bulrush, marshy area, is it?
Yes, yeah. There's this grass that's up there, and it's like tubes, and they're quite spiky at the end. I think it's called bulrushes or something like that. And there's tons of that quite high. And so I walked towards it, turned around, as my light cast on it the last time I looked, I saw the bum turning around, and this tail that was no way a Labrador's tail, a long black tail sticking out behind it, as it just disappeared away. So I didn't see a big cat head or anything, but I saw the back end of what I thought was a dog with a tail that was no way a Labrador tail. I had labs at that point, and my mother and dad used to breed labs, and my father trained them as gun dogs and some of the work. And so I know what Labradors look like. I'm quite familiar with them, and this was no way. I personally feel there's no way it was any dog's tail. It was too long.
Well, last week, I haven't got exact date in my head, but I received a message to my phone as a couple were driving towards Caton. They claimed that a puma or beige-coloured cat ran into the road chasing a deer, which in daylight up the bank just before. I don't know whether people know area, but just before you get to the old road going towards Caton as you're coming down from Bridlington. And that's interesting because a few months ago, we were only a few miles away, a mile and a half away from the old Primrose Valley holiday camp, which is disused now. There's still an holiday camp there, but part of it's disused and all overgrown. And there's a guy walking through there, cutting through, and claimed he'd seen a panther. What I find interesting, this thing was beige, what we reported the other week. What he saw was black. But that area in particular, there's a place called Airy Hill. And anybody who's familiar with area, that's close to Primrose Valley. We've got reports of cats this year there that have been seen. So they're definitely around the area. Once again, independent witnesses that, nothing at all to gain from kind of telling you these stories, but people coming forward. I haven't had any cat sightings on the cliff tops recently, but we do get, the odd ones. And, earlier when just jumping briefly to Dyatlov Pass,
yeah,
what were the terminology that they used for what had happened?
It was a compelling natural force. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it could mean so many things, and immediately
it's totally open-ended, isn't it? You could apply that to almost
natural
anything.
Force. It's just open-ended. You're spot on.
Yep.
Because I got the Board of Inquiry report for a tornado that crashed off Flamborough Head.
Wow.
December 12, 1985, ZA610. Really interesting. I mean, you could devote a full live stream to ZA610. It was found on 16th of December 1985 by the trawler, the Betty. 3-man crew retrieved the navigator. We've got all that. But when I got the Board of Inquiry report, because UFO activity had been seen in the area, we'll call it light form activity. They were supposed to be, or they probably were, on refueling exercises with buccaneers over the North Sea. There were three tornadoes and buccaneers. And one of the buccaneers, because they all have, this was ZA610, but I think it were MQU13, the sign that they were using that night. One of the buccaneers reported seeing lights pass down their port side. When they were doing the refueling, there was only one tornado in the area. They were doing it in stages.
Sorry, Paul, to interrupt. Sorry, don't interrupt. I don't mind me saying, just very quick. When you said they passed down the side, do you mean they were above the surface of the water, or
above the water in the sky? And one of the buccaneer pilots, they thought they'd sighted ZA610, and I'm reluctant to say exact positions, but I think he said in his 11 o'clock, and then he'd seen lights pass down his port side, which couldn't have been ZA610 because they'd have just seen it. There's no other aircraft in area because they're doing it in stages, and they don't actually connect with ZA610. They never find ZA. It's already gone down. But what, to get to my point, this terminology that you've just used, the people who wrote the Board of Inquiry report said we put that down to a nocturnal nighttime illusion. So we've got. I'm not saying it's a UFO. I'm not saying I don't know what it was, but they've got to be hallucinating.
Yeah.
Navigators
illusion.
And pilots. Suddenly it's a nocturnal nighttime illusion when they've seen these lights pass down. And something else? Out of all the aircraft tragedies connected with UFOs, and I'll find the paperwork. Somebody pull me up on it next week or so, because I didn't dig it out. Somebody sent it me. I think there's about 9 reports that have never been truly explained when there's been UFO activity or UAP activity reported in the days and weeks before and after. And one of them, it says, is a tornado that crashed in December of 1985 off Flamborough Head. That's ZA610. That is that aircraft. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not saying it's UFO related. I've no proof that it is, but it's a fascinating story.
Heck of a coincidence if it isn't, Paul.
Well, it's an interesting one. It crashed, and the trawler that found it and the crew of the Betty, they retrieved the navigator when they were out fishing for clams.
Right. Okay.
He said we knew we'd hit it. He says as we were walking to go fishing that day, we could see on the placards, when people used to put placards out with sort of big sheets of newspaper saying "tornado down" outside the newsagents. Thought that's where we're going to be fishing. He said, and they were out there fishing, I don't know how many hours, and suddenly the boat, he said the back end of the boat literally went down and the front end came up in the water. He says, we thought we were going to rip the back end of the trawler off. We knew instantly we'd hit it. Chances of doing that, they went into the wheelhouse and the plotter had mapped out this big black triangle shape that underneath the tornado. So they retrieved the nets as best they could, and they'd got the navigator in the nets, it complete in ejector seat, and they've got him on back at boat. But what I find fascinating is that was the only aircraft that crashed. So we've got a pilot and a navigator. 36 miles to the east on the same day, a Dutch fishing vessel, a Dutch trawler, retrieved another man in an ejector seat.
Oh.
But not the pilot. It wasn't the pilot. It's never really been established who it was. Some time later, some years later, I believe they tried to pass it off as being a doctor who was on board an helicopter. All this is a bit confusing for people, but that crashed a year before, approaching the Cecil Provine rig on the mouth of the Humber.
Helicopters don't have ejector seats.
Helicopters don't have ejector seats. And as without sounding too macabre, as the trawlermen and the men who work the sea tell me, if a body had been under the sea for a year, there would be nothing left of it.
Oh yeah,
you know. So ZE610's one that could be done in detail. If anybody wants to listen to it as a live stream at some point, we can go from start to finish, because it's loads and loads more. It's massive, that one. But I just instantly, when you said that explanation, I'm just thinking nocturnal nighttime illusion. Fascinating. But right, so I think what we'll do, we'll see whether Les has got any questions, if that's okay with you, Dean.
Yes, of course, no problem at all.
Yes, thanks everybody for joining tonight's show, and I think I can probably just name a few more who's coming to the chat. Tony Horner, welcome to the show. Adam Sandor, Outer Limits Magazine, hello Chris, welcome. And nickname is in, Steve Tree, Sasha Christie, and I did see Stargazer Eternal, and Lee Roscoe, welcome to the show, Lee. If I've missed anybody else, I do apologise. Right, questions. I think there was a couple came in before the start of the show, Paul. Oh gosh, I've lost them now. I'm losing the questions. Yeah. And I think we can remember. I can't remember who there was from now.
Well, I've got the first one here if you want to. I'm not sure when it's from, though.
Go on then, Dean.
It says, Paul, this is from G. Hawkins. Paul, have we had any further cryptid sightings or animal-related incidents in the cliffs?
Yeah, sorry, Dean. We'll come to that in a second.
Right,
I probably made that on here. Yeah.
My apologies.
I think the question broadly is where can this poster, where can he find all the YouTube videos or all the shows that you've been on, Paul, in the past?
God. I think it would be as easy for whoever's asked the question, and thanks for putting it to us, to just sort of Google, I don't know, Paul Sinclair Podcast Radio, because it's out there. They're on internet, and there's plenty.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think a few of them will still be at paywalls, aren't they?
Yeah,
Paul, so you won't get access to them.
The Dreamland ones for Whitley Strieber, and the Coast to Coast ones. There's quite a few for Midnight in the Desert that I've never heard, but I've done them. So I believe it's just you have to subscribe.
And there's a follow-up question to that. It was on about these disused RAF bases. Do you think there is still some activity underground? And the writer says deep underground. Do you think there's anything still going on at these places, Paul?
Well, obviously, once again, we're doing it speculation, Les, but it's interesting that we get people even going up onto the cliffs, and I'm not saying that RAF Bempton's active. There's cattle in field, and it's a working farm, and as everybody knows, I discourage anybody from going onto that land. But we get reports of rumbling sounds, heavy underground noises coming from in and around that area. And I should imagine people who live in close proximity have heard them, even if they want to deny that they've ever heard anything. And I've heard it myself. Steve Ashbridge has heard it. Bob's heard it. People have contacted me who've been up there, mostly in early hours at morning as well. So yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, I wrote about some tiny submarines that an old lady told me about on the Wolds at Foxholes, of all places, around the area of Foxholes. And she says, during the war, my dad didn't have to go to war because he worked the land. She says, and he took me as a little girl. She says, and we watched a little submarine come up in an area of water around that. And she sounded perfectly plausible. And I listened to what she'd got to say, but I didn't follow it up that much more. And then this year, I get an email from somebody who says that as a child, not in the war, they remember going out well into country, but around the Foxholes area. And he said, I think they said it was like a station, just a little concrete station, a platform. That's what it resembled. That's not what it was. And they went down, and there's little windows, and they could look, and there's submarines, small submersibles hung on cables.
Wow.
And then they went another time, and it's concreted over. Now, there might be people here just scratching their heads and going, nah, it's totally implausible. But we've got lots of things. I mean, the same person, well, the old lady that told me, she said that she was told they were coming from an underground river that came out into the North Sea around the area of Bempton. It's fascinating. I don't know.
Mm.
So we've got another story. We've got this old lady's story from the war, which sounds absolutely implausible because I've done Google Earth. I've spoke to people in the area, spoke to a guy who worked at Scruton's, which is in Foxholes, and got nowhere with it. But then out of the blue, we get this other guy coming, telling me he's seen them hung on cables. And I spoke to a military man. He said, yeah, he said, that is how they would have been. We did have one-man submersibles. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Have you got any thoughts on that, Dean?
I'd be honest with you, I'm quite amazed by it. I was enjoying listening to that then, because that's the first I've heard of it.
Well, it's
I'm quite shocked.
Yeah.
Quite shocked.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, then.
Just if you don't mind me bringing it up, Sasha Christie, when we were talking earlier on about the ejection seats, thank you, Sasha Christie. They've said there was an incident in Suffolk the 18th of November 1980 where two A-10s collided, and the helicopter rescue was dragged into the water when the parachute got wrapped in the winch.
Yeah. Well, we would Suffolk this though, Sasha. Yeah, but yeah, it's all good and well, perfectly explainable, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You've just put Les's question there, Dean.
Apologies, sorry.
Dark Angel is asking, can the lights, what you've seen in the sky on the evening, night time, and the dividing and recombining, are they pure energy, or is there something else in there?
I don't know. My gut feeling, I mean, when I spoke about it earlier, and the guy who said to me, I'm sat in my father's living room, overlooking the sea, overlooking Flamborough, and I can see these things above the cliffs. He got binoculars on them and said they were oval shaped. I know that's not answering your question, but my gut feeling is there is something behind them. Yeah, I mean, there's a guy, the ex MOD contractor who I've written about in Truth Proof 4, Johnny, that's his first name. I've not changed his name at all. And he saw these things over the sea with his wife. And when he got binoculars on them, he said inside them there was pyramids that looked bronze that were turning. But then that night he had the most, I think I've spoke about it once, that night when he went to bed, he came downstairs, the television had come back on and it was just static. They did that several times. And then he had the most horrendous dreams after seeing these objects. Oh, and the local papers, he sent me loads of information from the local papers where people had seen these, essentially what I'm describing as these orange spheres over the sea. But he'd seen with high-powered binoculars. A part of his job, they provided him with accommodation, this MOD contractor, and he'd got this house that had just got prime views overlooking the sea. He received dreams. He believed they were connected, and the dreams were horrendous to the point, and I'll not go into graphic detail, but to the point that the blood that he saw in the dream felt warm on his skin, even though there was no blood on his skin.
Oh, gosh.
But so, yeah, and it's written about. It's in Truth Proof 4 if anybody's remotely interested. Well,
yeah, okay. I think this one's probably one for you, Dean. Joan Thomas is asking, going back to the Dyatlov Pass incident, didn't one of them have parts of their jaw missing, Dean?
I can't say for sure off the top of my head, but that does ring a bell. I remember seeing some of the autopsy photos, and one or two of them were horrific. I must admit, they were quite ghastly. The one girl, bless her, she had terrible injuries to her face. With regards to the jaw, though, I don't want to say yes or no because I don't want to give invalid information. So the honest answer is I'm not sure. I would like to say that because it'd be wrong of me to give you an answer that's guesswork. I'd like to give you facts.
Yeah, well, you know, that what bit that threw it for me, the what's that, precision, but you'd think if it were from some kind of nuclear blast, it would be devastating injuries. Yet we've got body parts removed. We aren't going into graphic details. We've got body parts removed. Now, this isn't in capitals, but I'll just jump to it. I see Steve Ashbridge in chat. And Paul, yes, I'm glad Steve's in chat because he were with me. We were actually stood on Cliff Lane, and you might be able to tell me time. I think it's between 11 and 12 at night. So there's nobody about. There's no properties. There's no homes there. Next stop is the North Sea. And we heard sounds below the ground that, like Steve said, it sounded like massive lumps of concrete being dropped. I used to work at NEC, National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. And when you were stripping out exhibitions and they've got big fork trucks in and they dropped something, we'd been in such a big hangar, these great big hangars, it reverberated. That's the kind of sound it is. So could it be possible that there's caverns underneath and there's brickwork, there's rocks dropping, not brickwork? Of course, it's perfectly plausible.
Stalagmites, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Patricia Adams, right. I think you covered this one, Paul, earlier. I agree about the photo. I would say a man in winter gear. I think you answered that one, haven't you? Yeah. And right, Stargazer Eternal is asking, hi, Paul. Have you had any reports of anomalous birds recently? I saw something very strange near Danes Dyke the other day.
He said birds, B-I-R-D-S.
Yes.
Tell us what you saw, please.
No, I'd love to hear more about it.
I mean,
phoning to come in and tell us about that, but
kind of want a description of what they saw, wouldn't you?
Yeah, just all we could say, and I don't know if Bob's still in the chat, but I mean they're not. It's nothing supernatural or it's. I suppose it is unusual. Me and Bob saw the sea eagles at Speeton. We saw two, and I think it were about 18 months ago, long before the RSPB announced in the local papers that sea eagles had been sighted at Bempton. Well, they need to go to places that are a bit more remote than them stands that they stand at looking at puffins and seagulls. Because, and if you get a bit further out, then you'll see them, because we've definitely seen the sea eagles, if that's what you're talking about.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. Oof.
You're doing your chimp impression there, but let's say
Olofsson 1 is asking, why have you not finished the Hunmanby story? The book misses the army.
The book misses the army. You can only go so far with material that you've got. I have another witness for Hunmanby. Obviously, never wrote about the other witness because they didn't come till afterwards. There's a lot. Whoever's put this to me, it's a great question, but there's lots more to go with Hunmanby. When we do another project after Wolflands, it could very well be Hunmanby. And yeah, I can't. There's some things I can't talk about because some of the part of what the witnesses know don't want to go any further with it, and I've got to respect that, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Which doesn't help the reader, because obviously it's left you wanting, or it's left you realizing that there's more to it, and we had a doubt there is more to it, and that's why Hummonby's intriguing. Probably, I think Hummonby potentially is one of the biggest UFO related cases in United Kingdom.
Okay, I've got a question from Chris from the Outer Limits magazine, and I guess a question for both of you, really. Let's have a look. What's Paul's opinions on, so Paul and Dean really, on the local newspapers and their truthfulness in reports?
Well, they get it wrong, don't they, in a lot of instances, and a lot of times, Chris, it's probably because they want to sensationalize a story, you know, and that's part of the reason. I really don't go to papers that much. I must admit, the Bridlington Echo, and it's there, did a full page on me about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I never put it on social media, and I think they did okay with it. You know, they didn't over sensationalize things. They've not said, oh, like local UFO boffin, but do you know what I mean? Everything that they'd said were, you know, pretty much on point. But a lot of times it's there just for effect, in it, and just for a few laughs on at the expense of the person that's probably seen something unusual and regrets actually opening their mouth about it. I don't know whether that's
terrible. It shouldn't be like that. It's sad that it shouldn't be like that. Myself, I can't give comment if I'm on the local newspapers. However, I would hazard a guess that the local newspapers probably are much different to the big newspapers. And the big newspapers very much depends on which newspaper you go to. I'm telling everybody stuff they already know. It depends who you go to, because they all have to get their money from somewhere. And usually the person supplying the money has a big say in what goes in there. One thing I can tell you definitely, I couldn't whilst being employed, but now I can. When I was in London, I went to a lot of jobs. My job was I covered South London. Obviously my team, and there's 7 teams altogether. And then our sister teams covered all of North London. There was lots of jobs that I went to. Actually, this does refer to one local, I think it refers to a local newspaper. There was lots of jobs that I went to that either wouldn't get reported at all or would get played down. I very rarely saw them sensationalized, but I had seen things played down. I can't go into the details of it, but we went to a murder in Chiswick. It was a domestic incident that turned into a murder. And when it got to the newspapers, all it says was that a woman was found dead at X amount of address on this date. And it was terrible. It was, I can't say, I'm not going to say the name, obviously, but a good friend of mine had to stop working because of it. It had such an impact on her, the scene, that she had to leave the job. And I won't go any more on that. I've got my own feelings on that she left the job and how she was treated. But yeah, with regards to newspapers, they're owned, as we know, by people with a lot of money that all have political affiliations. Some are very pro-conservative, some are pro-Labour. It depends on who the newspaper is. Ultimately, it comes down to the editor. And as you said, Paul, I think we're progressing in the right direction. But unfortunately, at the moment, I still feel that a lot of what we are talking about, as you mentioned, Paul, is more of a giggle or, look, the crazies are up to it again.
Yeah.
However, with what's come out in the past couple of years from the US, the stuff they've released, the Nimitz encounters and everything, some people got a lot of egg on their face. It's something you can't ignore anymore.
Well, without a doubt. And the people that thought it were all a load of rubbish, now they're seeing people, I won't say that are any more valuable than yourself, Les, or anybody in chat. But the people that they didn't expect to come out saying these things are real and these incidents happen are saying it. Like you said, it's just left them sort of a little bit mouth agog kind of thing, jaw dropped.
Yeah.
But you know, once again, without going into any detail, and no disrespect to anybody lost their life. But there's been 2 fatalities at Bempton. And apart from one local website that affiliated to a newspaper get into it and somebody saying somebody's been found on Cliff Lane, there's been nothing else. Not saying it's anything to do with unusual or unexplained phenomena, but maybe I know family probably don't want things throwing everywhere, but there's been nothing. Do you know?
I can remember when I was young, Paul, murders would make it to the front page of the newspapers, the national newspapers. I can still remember that.
Yeah.
And whilst I'm not really young, I'm not old either. You know, I was born in the late 70s. And I can still remember in the 80s, you know, regularly picking up on it, my mum and dad talking and seeing the front newspaper said someone had been murdered with a knife.
Yeah.
Where, as you just pointed out, we're in a sad spot when someone a life gets taken. And
Yeah,
life,
that's correct.
you know, there's nothing more important, and they don't mention it.
Yeah, well, absolutely nothing apart from just somebody in chat on a local Facebook group affiliated to a newspaper just said, you know, that's about all that's been heard from it. But
yeah, well, I've got a little theory here. I mean, it could be where local newspapers there's a lot more sensitivity about what they report because they're nearer to these people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they probably know some of these people
Yeah.
personally. So there's a lot of sensitivity probably. National papers, as you say, Dean, don't give 2 monkeys, and they'll just put out what they want to put out, won't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, can I just move on with the question, guys?
Yeah.
Right then. Well, I won't ask the Sasha Christie question because I think Dean covered that for me. Dean, didn't you really? Which was about the Suffolk, the incident in Suffolk. 18th of November, the 2 A10s collided. The helicopter rescuer was dragged into water when a parachute got wrapped in a winch. And
I think they
Sasha
mentioned
says,
Sorry, yes,
yeah, that's it, yeah.
I think
And I stole my thunder there, Dean, but
So
never
still
mind.
got to read it out, Dean. Did you realise that? What he did?
Yes,
was that
yeah.
sorry?
He's still got to read it out. Did you realise what
No,
he did?
I didn't. Sorry, I do apologise, gentlemen.
No, not
Yeah,
you. Not
and
you.
she concludes with there is ejection seat logs online if you search the incidents and ejection logs.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So
That's
interesting.
good information.
Okay, yeah, bad gaming. Peter Masters has asked about the 1.6 gigahertz, Paul. That's referring to your research in Bepton.
Well, Well, Peter Masters would know more about the 1.6 gigahertz than me because Peter has kindly come up with all his electrical equipment, and we've found these anomalous signals up around Bempton. And as Peter, another guy that it'd be worth bringing on to live stream, even if to talk about that for 30 minutes at some point, because Peter's knowledge is far superior to mine. That's why I took him up there. And what he's found is the signals that what Peter found, more importantly, at Bempton, are the exact same anomalous signals that they're finding at Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, and that's his words, not mine. So I can't really add to it, Peter. You know I can't, because you're the guy with the expertise, not myself. But yes, we have been up there, and yes, we do intend doing more work up there. With Peter's electronic equipment, and we're taking a laptop up, and it's interesting to see the readings that we got. And once again, don't mean a great deal to Paul. It'd be like me showing you a drawing of a complicated roof and expecting you to understand it if you've never looked at one before, you know. But yeah, Peter, we need to talk to you about it at some point. How strange.
I'll just ask that question again. I think, just a minute, Paul. Yeah, my microphone was off. The question is from Patrick Daniel. Did you get anywhere with the 24-hour cameras by the cafe?
Yeah, interesting, Patrick, that you should mention that. I spoke to the guy yesterday. I met him in town quite accidentally, and asked him again. There's a full street-sized CCTV camera on the cliff tops at Thornwick Bay that just overlooks the sea, and there's a cafe there that looks like it belongs in 1960s, all clean and everything, you know, all sort of nicely done out. But that's all there is in vicinity, and we've got this absolutely brilliant, pristine CCTV camera on a pole that's about 20 foot in the air. And I've approached this guy to see whether we could get access to view the footage, and I would pay to look at it if we got access to it 24 hours a day. And I'm sure a lot of people in chat would be willing to pay. And I approached him again yesterday and asked him the same question, because I don't know who's looking at it. I don't know what it's there for. This guy owns it, but that's as much as I know. So, Patrick, no. Patrick had his own sighting whilst at the Thornwick Bay and Flamborough Head about 3 months ago. He might correct me if I'm wrong. He'd gone up there, obviously an interesting unexplained phenomenon. We'd never met, and he contacted me. And incidentally, me and Bob Brown were at Bempton on the night when he had his sighting, and he said that there's a Sea King helicopter, or the rescue helicopters out at sea, probably on exercise. And he's at the lighthouse side, so it comes out on a big sort of bit of a headland, like you can see in this map at back. So we're at one side, he's at other. We saw the helicopter go around the headland, and as he's watching it, a red sphere opened up in the sky. When I say opened up, they're not opening, they just seem to come into existence. As the helicopter approaches, it goes off. And sort of then brightens up a little bit and then just vanishes. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing out there. That's what I saw last night. These were orange, what I saw. They just sort of evolved and vanished. So if I've not got that right, Patrick, just correct me in chat. And I think that's what you told me. So
I've got a question from Tina, and this is for you, Dean. Hello, Dean. Does the Brecon Beacons area of Wales have the most UFO encrypted activity?
A quick answer, I'll elaborate more, but a quick answer to that is I'm not sure. I'm not sure. However, it might have been actually this show where I believe you had the gentleman in from Swansea. Is that correct?
Yeah, Swansea UFO group, yeah.
Boys. And it was either themselves that said, or I've heard someone that that area, the Brecon Beacons, and I think towards the Gower Peninsula, has a lot of activity. A lot of activity. For some reason, I want to say it's one of the hotspots, but I don't know for sure. But yes, there's lots of things I hear about the Brecon Beacons, lots of stories. Paul, you might be able to help me on this, but I got told quite some years back a story about how they allegedly, I must stipulate, allegedly, there was a case on the edge of the Brecon Beacons where a young lady and young boy went out in the lad's car and they didn't return. And for some reason, the story I've been told is that police were involved. Then the military got involved because they found the car at the edge of the Brecon Beacons, parked up, I believe it was in just an open area. And now, I don't know if it's been flowered up or people have added there a little bit. They want to make it more interesting. But the person told me that allegedly the car seats showed signs of being ripped out of the mounts. The seats have been taken out of the mounts. However, the roof, the headlining, there was no damage. Now, you think if you want to pull those with force, it's going to take a lot of force.
Yeah.
You think you're damaged stuff. Apparently, there's no damage. And then they found the bodies, and the person that told me there was talk of, like you have the cattle mutilation, these bodies, it was the boy and the girl, and they showed signs of human mutilation. And I've heard that off more than one person. I don't know if it's true or not. I really don't know, because I'm sure.
You don't have a year for that then, Dean?
I don't, sorry, Paul, I don't. I've got it somewhere because I wrote it down. And it's not the first time I've heard that.
No, interesting. You know, earlier when you were speaking, you said reports used to come in to an area. Did you say Monmouth?
Monmouth, yes.
Monmouth. So once again, I mean, obviously you're not sort of privy to them reports as such. You couldn't get to look at them, could you? But you were familiar, even with probably a mild interest in the subject of UFOs, that reports to the Monmouth area were coming in a lot more frequently than other areas.
Yeah, with those reports, sorry, Paul, they were for big cat sightings.
Big cat sightings, sorry.
Yes, Monmouth. For people who don't know the area, Monmouth is quite a rural area. The town it's seen as affluent. You know, there's a private school in Monmouth. Oh, sorry, there's several private schools in Monmouth. I say that because my sister, her daughter, went to Monmouth Girls' School. But it's in general, Monmouth is an affluent area.
Yeah.
but it's very rural. You've got Rockfield Studios just on the outskirts of it. So it's a town, and then you've got little almost hamlets dotted here and there, but a lot of it is country lanes and farmers' fields. You encounter that mostly.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's it seemed, or it appeared to me, from being in the job and speaking to police, speaking to fellow colleagues, and also just where I live, things that come through the grapevine over the years, it seems to be there's a lot of big cat sightings. If you wanted to look at Gwent as a whole, the area of Gwent, Monmouth would be a place you'd go if you wanted to look for big cat sightings.
Do you know, I've got quite a bit of information, and we'll just get to a few more questions in a minute. I'm sure Les has got some. Somebody who used to work, I'm not going to say the zoo, but somebody used to work at a very big zoo in the United Kingdom, has got a wealth of knowledge of escapees. Lots and lots of different kinds of animals, even to the point of a pack of wolves. And they said they only retrieved 2 of them. Do you know?
Wow.
So, and so we've got up in North Yorkshire, up past Fylingdales. I got a report a couple of years ago where a guy travelling to work, he were going to be working in Whitby on a motorbike, and saw 2 great big wolves sat at the side of the road. And he claims they were big grey wolves. The bit that I found freaky, and himself, because he said a car were approaching it early hours at morning. It were just past the Flask pub, if anybody knows that area, and there's nothing up there, it's remote. There's a Falcon and the Flask. He says, and as he's travelling down this hill, a car's flashing its lights at him on a motorbike, and he thinks, what's that doing? And as he rounds the corner from coming out of down this hill, there's 2 great big wolves sat at the side of the road. The freaky bit for me, and I've spoken to the guy. He actually is the dredger operator at Whitby and at Scarborough. So and he'd no fear of telling me that, by the way. So I'm not just saying something I shouldn't be saying. But I've spoken to the guy. He said when I drove past him and looked at him, this is where it gets weird. They smiled at me. Don't ask me. Do you know? He said, "Is it dogs bearing the teeth?" You get that kind of look. I think that's what he must have been meaning. But I did push him on it. So it's an interesting one. I don't know where we're going with that, but let's jump to Les with the.
Right, I've got one more question for now, and then I'll let you run with the story you want, Paul. Yeah, Rick Allen is asking, Paul, good question this one. Do you ever feel you might be in danger from the government?
Who could say? I don't think I'm important enough, Rick. And, we've had some unusual things happen. Bob's probably gone out at chat. That Range Rover were unnerving that paralleled us along the cliff tops. I did ring the farmer. There was nothing up there that night. Blacked out windows. People have heard me talk about it before. Beautiful car. It were a Vogue. It weren't something that had been sprayed and looked all glossy. It was a new vehicle, or very new. The corn had been cut, so all we got was stubble. It's about 100 yards away from us, 150 yards away as we were walking along cliff tops in night, slowly getting darker. Myself and Bob settled at this seat, a good a mile and a half, 2 miles from where I parked my car, and it's dark, and I can hear the stubble crunching. And I said to Bob, I said that vehicle's here. And out of the darkness, it just loomed out, went to the back of us. I went up with a tape. That's kind of person, at 30 foot from seat to field edge, because it were in the distance. It were on brow as we're walking, and it just parked at the back of us. Blacked out windows, no lights on. So they've obviously got some kind of night vision here. Yeah. And just sat there. It didn't just pause and then drive off. It just sat there behind us. Bob said, that were unnerving. We had a doubt. But as regards, sorry, Dean, as regards to government, I don't know, Rick. It's difficult to say. When I looked into, we touched on it tonight, ZA610, the tornado that crashed, December the 12th, 1985. I received a phone call, and it's not like I were doing live streams, so somebody could be winding Paul up, telling me to stop looking into events over the North Sea. One of the trawlermen, Tom Quinn, they all have their little cabins on harbour. where they do the lobster pots and get all the gear ready, prepare nets. But then there's a bigger area that we're all working. I received a phone call that went to answer phone on my phone, and it was Tom and the other guys in the harbour all talking about fishing, not talking about some downed aircraft. Remember, this was 1985. This is only 4 years since I started looking into it. Not just talking in general, but it come to my phone. I recorded it. I took it down to him. Says, listen to this. And he said to me, have you been recording us? No. Tom's 6'5". I'm not gonna. Do you know what I mean? And that's not exaggerating. And so some weird things. I don't know what the word is, Ricky, but some unnerving things. I think things designed to rattle you. You know, we'll stay with ZA610. When I was looking into it, people must have been somebody somewhere knew. This is before I got the Board of Inquiry report and other things. And I got contacted by, I'm not going to say the Air Marshal, but somebody high up in authority who said that he wrote the Board of Inquiry report. And clearly he was involved in writing that report. And he wanted to help me. He wanted to quell some of the theories that I might have been forming and some of the things that I might have been doing to suppress any of these things that I might have been saying.
Yeah.
So we exchanged a few messages, a few emails, and I told him that the crew of the Betty, they called the trawler, had found this aircraft, and I told him that various other things, that Tom had retrieved the navigator. The other two crew members were too ill by sight of what they'd seen. You know, it distressed them. And the minesweeper, the HMS Brecon, came alongside and was screaming at Tom. But Tom were waving to him at first because he thought that they were just being on the right way. And then as he got within earshot, they're saying, get away from the seat, it's live, there's enough explosive to blow back at trawler off. But when they got aboard, they wanted Tom to help one of their operatives remove the navigator. And we've got to be delicate here. It's somebody's loved one, isn't it? But,
yes, yeah.
But when Tom asked why, when Tom asked the reason why, he said because of radiation. It's potentially radioactive, which is unusual, isn't it, to say the least. And I'll get back to this Air Marshal in a minute.
Sorry to interrupt, Paul, but would that be possibly from the ammunitions? Because I know, for example, that you get the Apache gunship uses depleted. Is it depleted uranium? I'm not sure, but on there.
Would they been carrying live ammunition? I mean, the only thing that I thought that would have carried radioactive materials would have been the dials on, but that would have been minimal.
Oh gosh, yeah.
As the trawler guy said to me, he said we were fishing for what's called queenies, big shellfish.
Yep.
He said, and we had about 40 bags of these things on the boat. The first thing they did, the military, were throw them overboard. Why? Because they could be contaminated with radiation, which is another strange one. Like I said, ZA610, I never intended talking about it tonight, could run and run. But this guy contacted me, wanting to sort of dispel any theories that I might be forming. And I told him about the Betty, and I told him about retrieving the navigator and the second body being found 36 miles to the east in an ejector seat, but it wasn't the pilot. And he knew nothing about the navigator, the trawler, the Betty. So he thought I were being spun a yarn by the trawlermen. So I explained to him that I'll not go into great detail here, but I explained to him that I could send him a letter by one of the family members of the deceased, thanking them for what they'd done. And I never heard again. I never heard anything from this person again. I know it doesn't answer Rick's question. I don't know. Maybe I seriously don't think we're important enough to be considered a threat to anything. I mean, if we saw something highly unusual on the cliff tops, and I filmed it and wanted to start putting it out there, and it was something that really nobody wanted to see, then you might pose a problem. But I don't know.
If I'm honest with you, Paul, I think if you did see anything that was truly, truly sensitive, there would be no convertness. They would be very overt because there's powers in place and laws in place where you'd have a visit and you'd be told no uncertain terms.
Do you know, one night I was up on the cliff tops, and I don't know what this means, or even, once again, not unexplained phenomena, but unusual.
Mm.
And I was with Andy Ramsden. And we're at one of these viewing platforms. We'd not gone far. We don't go far with Andy. And if he's in chat now, he'll laugh to himself. But Andy kind of gets spooked easily. So it's night time. And in the distance, probably about a mile away, a mile and a half, it's hard to judge, I could see two lights walking along the cliff tops. And at the time, it's a few years ago, I had a Sony VX2100, old digital tape one, but they're really good in dark conditions. So I could see these men coming. So what they did, when they got to the path where you'd go up to the RSPB, they stopped and started chatting. And we're then about 200 yards away from where they are at a viewing platform. And then all of a sudden, just out of the darkness, two men passed with one with his hands on the shoulders of the other. And they were completely black, head to toe. No hands, you could just see the outlines. Oh, Andy, look. And they literally just passed. It looked like a pantomime horse. And they just carried on walking up the cliffs. And I found that unusual. Now, I was told by somebody in military that could have been some kind of military confidence training. I don't know whether it is or it isn't. It was just might have been nothing to do with military. But bearing in mind, we'd been watching these two guys with headlights on, walking up the cliffs for a mile. They must have been behind them all this way because they stopped. And then literally 30 seconds later, these two just walk up the cliffs and into the night. And I thought to myself then how easy it would be to lose somebody. It's not like in a film, is it? You know, you could set a camera up, I could just end up on the other side of cliffs.
I just got to let Lucy out to go to the toilet in a minute. Sorry, Paul. She's come over to me and she's nudging me, but it's literally the door by here. So carry on. Sorry.
That's all it was. Nothing unexplained there, really.
She's going to start howling.
No, please don't.
Sorry about this. Come on, Maya. Good job.
So the Sky's just wrote the other question, and I'd save you writing it down. Rick says, if you're seeking the truth, Paul, then you are a threat. Well, in which case, Rick, we're all a threat. You know, I mean, me and you, Rick, haven't spoke for a few years, and I know we've met, and yeah, Rick, when you want, I'll still speak to you. You know that. So, okay, then, have we anything else?
Yeah. I've got. Let's have a look. I'll just find out where I'm up to here. Right then, Katrina Hartley is asking Paul. I think this was for the cafe. Could you set up an overnight camera yourself or a webcam?
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, we have done it. Andrew Collins. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Andrew from Ancient Aliens. He's been up a few times, and we've set trail cams up and then gone and retrieved them the next day. And jumping from the cameras, Katrina, interesting thing, Andrew brought a load of electrical equipment up because he's not really experienced anything up there, although he realizes it's an area of strangeness. But I suppose it is strange. All his electrical equipment, and I mean all of it, his thermal camera, his radio recording equipment, all batteries depleted whilst they were up there, and I were with him, so I knew that had happened. It's happened to me with a thermal camera with a onking battery on it, and it's happened to Steve Ashbridge quite a few times. So yeah, there's also that happens up there as well. So yeah, okay, Les.
Yeah, Steve Ashbridge is asking, Paul, out of all the things you or we have seen or heard, what is the most unexplainable in your opinion?
But I think he knows what I'm going to say. This is the hedge lights. And I would have talked about these tonight, and Steve touched on them when he came on live stream about a month ago. And it's something that we never capitalized on. And back in 2000 and probably 2006 to 2009, myself and Steve spent hours, many hours in darkness up on the East Yorkshire Wolds around Cottam, Octon and Sledmere, trying to observe these orange spheres of light that were prolific in area at the time. We'd got a farmer up at Staxton Wold who'd got cameras on moving cams all day and all night and big data banks collecting information. Basically, his cameras were filming 24/7 and filming nothing but occasionally he would catch these anomalous objects. I still believe that guy's probably got more UFO footage than anybody in UK. I've seen quite a lot of it, but I haven't spoke to him for years. And he alerted me to it, told me what were happening. So I told Steve, I'd been up a few times. I think it was Jessica, one of our daughters. She'd just finished uni at a loose end, and she came up with me. And once again, somebody new to area, you're seeing these things. And we got some incredible sightings that particular night. A blue light moving along the top of the corn, not in the complete darkness. I'm filming a sphere of light, and Jessica's telling me about a blue light, and I daren't take the camera off it. Then we took Steve up. I asked Steve, I told him about it. Steve also had an interest in unexplained phenomena since we worked together probably 20, 25 years ago. And back in, let's say, 2006, 2009, to that period, told Steve, and I think he went up a bit skeptical, weren't quite sure whether we'd see anything. And on this particular night, I took the computer guy up, a very good friend of mine, Mark Sturdy. I think he basically just wanted to, satisfy his curiosity. He's not really that interested in UFOs. Well, it happened. And we were seeing these huge orange spheres of light and white spheres of light, all in remote places like Langtoft and Cottam and Sledmere. That particular night were active. But jumping to what Steve said, because I find I'm rambling all over the place, what's the most interesting for me? Very close to Upton, you come off the roundabout at Upton, so you've got 4 roads. You've got you can go towards Staxton, you can go to Langtoft, or you can go to Sledmere. So we're just coming off from Bridlington, and we just go down that road probably 400 yards, and we can take a right, and I think it's a road that takes to a little village called Buttercram. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. We parked in lay-by there, and we did that for months, probably 2 or 3 times a week. You see, when jump into it for a moment, when people say, well, how come you're seeing these things and we're not seeing these things? Well, you're probably sat at home watching Coronation Street, while some silly fool like me stood there at 11 o'clock at night and 1 in the morning, because other people have randomly seen these things. So you think it's worth a punt, we'll give it a go. So we stood there, and you've got the road that goes to Sledmere and goes to Cowlam Crossroads, then Sledmere. And in the hedges, we can see these opaque lights. And that's all you can see. You can see through them, but they're circular, and they're not far away. And that, we're asking ourselves, are we really looking at these? I'm not joking. We were there to see the orange spheres of light, what the farmer guy up at Staxton Wold had told us about. But we're looking at these things, and we never capitalised. At one point, Steve ran into the field to try and get under them to look at them. So, yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing. But once again, we've got location, Les. And Dean, the location is key, as we've said many times. We're at Upton, just near Buttercram. A little bit further down the road, there's a valley, and you're close to what's called the Beesendale Valley. And the Beesendale Valley has got stories that go back in folklore of the huge phantom hounds and the Beesendale lights, these ghost lights. It's happening today. It's here now. But we've got the guy who worked at Plaxton's Coaches travelling to work one morning, looking into that valley in daylight, sees an egg-shaped object in the bottom of the valley with, he didn't say aliens, he said there's beings around it or people around it. He says, I don't know why I didn't stop, I just drove on. It's for all intents and purposes, there's a UFO landed in valley or just off ground in valley. We've got these weird UFO sightings. We've got these, what we term the hedge lights. Further up, you've got Cottam and the people at a farm at Cottam. He talks about, I wrote about it in Truth Proof 1, the Cottam Wood spaceship. The guy said, that's my wood over there, and told me about being a young man following what he called a spaceship, just going along the top of the trees, making a sound like a breeze. And then he followed it, it came back, and then went down all the valleys towards Langtoft and disappeared.
Wow.
Locational hotspots. That's where myself and Chris Short in 2004, I think it was, August 2004, saw this thing like a huge glowing tube above the trees. 2014, up at Cottam, the farm there, they parked their car up to shut their gates on to get to their farm. And that's where that huge glowing tube, they likened it to a jumbo jet without wings, just lifted on sideways on and started coming towards them. And then just vanished. what happened to that? What me and Shorty saw, Chris Short, it just vanished. We're watching it. It's not making a sound. We can feel it. There's I don't know. It's weird. There was like a pulsing feeling coming through us. But we then looked at each other and said, "Where's it gone?" It didn't fly away. It just vanished. So
to answer Steve's question,
Well,
99.99% of it's unexplainable, Paul.
oh gosh, it's all unexplainable, Les. Yeah.
Just to come in a minute, if you don't mind me, when you were talking about that, Paul, it's just some food for thought. I've forgotten his name, the Jem Ron something that did the Sierra sounds, Sasquatch Sierra sound, Ron Moorhead.
Ron Moorcroft. Oh, Moorhead.
Moorhead, that's it. Yep. Apparently, there was a lot of stuff that he discussed verbally, but he didn't put in the official report or book, whatever it is. But apparently, they regularly saw tube lights up there, and the way they described it was like a lightsaber moving around.
Really?
They saw quite a lot of that, and that's something which I've heard quite a few times. I can't remember yet. I heard an interview someone did. I think it might have been on the Confessionals, Tony Merkel, his podcast. I think it was on there where a boy and a girl went camping, and the lad woke up and saw what he described as a tube of light in the field, and it came into his tent. But he said it came through the wall of the tent. Didn't make any mark. It was almost like you could imagine a ghost would move. He said it came in, but when it came in, it lit the entire tent up like daylight, and then it moved back out, and he just watched it disappear off in the distance.
I got a report from the 1970s, but I think it's late 1960s because I haven't got it in. I haven't got the details of it in front of me, and it's of the police. The Filey police, so I should imagine there only one or two in the little village of Filey, but they were chasing a UFO through the town of Filey.
Wow.
Obviously this thing's in sky, but there were a big tower, the big like circular gas towers.
The gas in.
Yeah, and it literally went into the side of that and disappeared. No damage. No damage, but that's interesting in itself. It's
there's so many questions in that, isn't there?
1960s. What same person told me that while she was with her husband and her son, Scott, because it was Scott who put me onto all these sightings. His mum's still around, by the way, so, still there to talk to. And I think it was his mum and his dad. And if anybody's familiar with Filey Brig, it's an outcrop of rock that goes out into the sea. Obviously, when tide's covering it, they've got a light at one end because it's a danger to shipping because it's not very far below the surface, and it's just absolutely treacherous. But at one point in tide, when rocks showing, because at low tide you can walk along it, they saw what they believe were a 4x4 vehicle drive along the brig. Filey Brig's totally uneven. I mean, you've got to jump down into big divots and everything. You couldn't drive a 4x4, but then it went straight into sea and disappeared. Just weird things. I mean, Filey's an unusual place. It's about 6 miles as crow flies from where we are now, and you've got the stories of the fishermen. Some fishermen I've spoken to, and it goes back decades and decades. Where below Filey Brig, they've seen spheres of light. They've talked about seeing lights coming up out of the water. I think it was 2021. Myself and Dave Barnes, the police officer. Well, he's not a police officer now, but me and Dave. We were walking along the cliff tops at Bempton, and if anybody's seen that bit of footage of the white sphere of light, Dave said he saw it come out of Filey Brig, out of the bay, and then I managed to film it travelling all the way across the bay. It's an interesting bit of footage, and I don't know where it is. Is it on website, Les? I don't know what I've done with that, but
Offhand, I don't know, Paul.
But no,
I've got another question.
Go on, then.
Okay then. David Mitchell is asking, Paul, have you ever heard of the old stinker, a cryptid sighting around Barmston Drain? And I'm pretty sure I know the answer. So if so, where do you think all this fits in then, Paul? That's my question.
That's your question, or Chris Mitchell's?
The last part was mine.
Right. Where does it all fit in? I don't know. It's interesting because Barmston Drain runs out onto the beach, obviously at Barmston, which is 4 miles up coast, 5 miles up coast. Obviously, it goes inland to Hull, and it's a man-made waterway into it to sort of, well, to stop hull flooding, I would imagine. So that's the Barmston Drain. But there's been reports of this thing, I don't know, decades and decades, of a thing akin to a werewolf. What I find interesting, though, is some of the stories and accompanying the Beast of Barmston Drain are actually the stories from Flixton, which is 45 mile away.
I've used that before,
You know, attacking a stagecoach in 1800s. These are all Flixton stories. And once again, we talked about newspapers. It's newspapers wanting to bolster an account up, and they've dragged things from another area. Do you know what I mean? But that's just how it is. Where does it fit in with the Beast of Barmston Drain? I don't know. I mean, is it something that's using the coastline to get to where it wants to be? I still can't get my head around it, even though we've made Wolflands people, that these things are actually walking about, living, breathing, sentient creatures. I don't think they are. I think there's something else. I think there's some, get my teeth in, they're from some other sphere of existence. It's just, the sightings are so far and few between. And yet they're still localized to certain areas, and areas are named after the beast. I mean, very close to where we've been filming for Wolflands, we've got East Ayton. And if you go back in time, you've got writers who are talking, like Howard Brealey, 120 years before I ever looked into any of this, you know, and they're talking about the Barguest of East Ayton, the huge phantom hound that stalked the forests and woodlands of the area. Now, what are we doing with Wolflands? We're just talking about the same things. And, you know, all of these things came up in the research and we found them. Then we've got the Forest of Broxer, which I've touched on before. And it's strange that the Broxer, in some cultures, is a shape-shifting demon. Yet people are seeing these things in a forest called Broxer. Fascinating. So, Les, have we more questions?
Yeah, it's just one from Space Cadet Lottie. And by the way, guys, some great questions in tonight. And thanks for all the questions on the chat. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and everything like that. Because I know you guys can do it for us. We're trying to get, I don't know how many we've got now, but we are trying to get another 500 to reach that 6,000 mark.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. If you can subscribe tonight, we would appreciate it.
You shouldn't have got me on here. You'll lose all your subscribers now after tonight.
I don't think so, Dean. I wouldn't have said that. No way. Let's have a look then. I'm just sorting through some of these from Sky. She sent me a question from Space Cadet Lottie. Any strange accounts from people from the area where Hornsey Mere is, Paul? And for anybody who don't know, can you describe Hornsey Mere?
Hornsey Mere, it's just a huge area of water that's just, in summertime, it's full of visitors, and it's waterfowl, swans, geese. It's just a big lake, Hornsey Mere, and beautiful place. When I do have a big cat sighting from Hornsey Mere, there's little islands in the mere, dotted in and around the mere, and fishermen and people walking claim to have seen big cats around the mere. When we say big cats, we're not talking lions and tigers, we're talking pumas and panther type cats, but that claim to have seen them. And I've got a Bigfoot sighting close to Hornsey Mere, so which I've forgotten about. So yeah, things are seen around there. And I must admit, my kind of passion is Spayton and Bempton, you know, and I shouldn't say that because everywhere is just as interesting, but that seems to be the focus of my main interest. And there's things to see around Hornsey. Ulrome, UFO reports around Ulrome, which is close to Hornsey, as the person who wrote that question probably knows. And out at sea off Ulrome, I've got reports of lights under the sea at Ulrome in particular. So once again, location being key, but green lights. More than one report of green lights being seen under the sea at Ulrome. We've got lights under the sea at Bempton. We've got lights under the sea at Filey. What is it? 29th of September this year. Sorry, 27th of September this year. Got a report from a dog walker. I didn't get the report. This went into Coast Guard. And I've spoken to people. So that's as much as I'll say at the moment. But a triangle entering the sea at Wilsthorpe. What did we have in 2009? This was September 27th. September 15th, 2009, we'd got the bait diggers based in Bridlington who dig for the fishing bait, and they were at Wilsthorpe, claiming that they'd seen triangles entering the sea. If you speak to the bait diggers, they will tell you they can put chest waders on and walk out a long distance. The water's that shallow, so it shouldn't work. They shouldn't be there. What are they seeing? Is there any validity in September the 15th, 2009 sighting of the old couple that claimed they'd seen this circle of glowing boomerang-shaped objects over the sea? The next day, the military came. You know, and it's interesting. All of these, and I realise this, people listening to this, all of these are snippets of information, and to do it justice, we'd have to do Wilsthorpe in a full live stream. We'd have to do ZA610 in a full live stream. So you're just getting little snapshots of what I'm looking into, or have looked into. When my computer's singing its head off that fan, it doesn't seem to like this at the moment, but yeah. So
yeah, just blow on it, Paul.
So
blow on it.
That's
my advice.
I'll just pour this cold drink on it.
Yeah. Well, just to pick up on some things. And this is just my idea, guys. I don't. You tell me, Dean, Paul, what you'll think of it. We see these lights out at sea. People see them. You see them, and with the reports of you just mentioned of these things entering the water. Now, earlier on, we talked about a question came in about, is there anything under these RAF bases? Could the two be connected?
I think they could, yeah. And I think there's a good chance. I mean, where myself and Bob Brown saw the three lights out at sea, I'm saying a triangle, but at three of anything, if they're not in a straight line, they're going to form a kind of a triangle. But they were pretty much a perfect triangle. It was just in front of the RAF base. And it's hard to judge how far out they were. You know, you're looking at 18 to 22 mile, depending on weather conditions. These things, I would have said 2 or 3 mile out. And they look to be as big as, showing me age here, but anybody remember when you had a dustbin with lid on? They look to be as big as dustbin lids. And I've got my nice Canon camera and took loads of pictures and got pictures of them. Bob had his phone and got the best picture. That's just how it goes. But lights under the sea, yeah, could be connected, but I'd unless we're going to get somebody, why you'd think somebody would break the spell of silence if they knew something. Even, you know, I have a friend who's a Coast Guard, and that's as close as you'll get to me saying any more, who knows that a lot of this is being suppressed. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to jeopardize anybody's career or anything, but I've got lots and lots of information, and yeah, I better stop there, to be honest with you, because I could go further.
Could I add a bit to that, Paul, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Just some food for thought. With these lights, I've always two things I would like to do. First of all, if I could, would love to be able to somehow find out, are these lights being seen in the same frequency wherever they are seen, or are they being seen more frequently around military bases? Because it leads into my question then. You've got to ask yourself, are these intelligent, or are they a phenomena of nature? No, I don't believe they're natural phenomena, not at all. I think there's far too much intelligent stuff going on. And I do wonder, when they're seen around military bases, is it because the link is it's a military vehicle, it's man-made, or is it how some people have reported saying that they've got inside information that actually we're being observed because we're reaching a point, humanity, they have no return with regard to a retreating planet, but also technology-wise, are we reaching a point where now our ignorance could be spread further than just our planet? And I do stipulate our ignorance, because I think we do a lot of things that are very silly. Humanity, I feel, has got a bit of a habit of doing something, then thinking about the consequences, rather than thinking about the consequences of it and then doing it. And I do wonder, and then also it raises another question for me. I'm sorry if I'm trying to sound, but
we want to hear it, Dean.
The other question it raises for me is, we talk about these in relation to military bases, so are they maybe man-made? Well, I feel they can't be, because then you hear these stories of them passing through objects or passing through something, you know, and the way they move. It'd be physically impossible to get a person in there. I would believe it'd be physically impossible for someone to be in it. Could it be a drone? But at the same time, I feel then you have to remove your common sense when doing things. Not in a hard way, but you've got to ask yourself, well, I'm seeing this orb, for example. Oh, there can't be a person in there. Well, there's not supposed to be orbs. Does that make sense? These sort of things aren't supposed to exist. So if you're going to accept that, you automatically have to accept, I feel, that, well, is there a technology we don't know about that is capable of doing these things?
Well, do you know, Dean, I think we could rule the drone out in a lot of instances, because a lot of these sightings go back, the predate drones, they're going back to 40s and 50s, and
right, okay.
And the actual
I don't mean drones with propellers, by the way. Just
the actual phenomena though that we're looking at doesn't appear to have changed. Not
right,
the stuff we're looking at over the sea. You would think if it's some kind of advanced technology, we would get different descriptions to what we're getting. Huge cigar-shaped objects seen by fishermen out in boats at Filey in 1930s, or off Speeton and Bempton, that are just hung in the sky and then just suddenly just accelerate away at supersonic speeds. You would think that we'd be getting a different type of technology. The orange spheres have been seen since as long as I can see recorded data in the lifeboat logs and the Coast Guard logs. And they're still getting put down. They were getting put down then as false alarms with good intent. So we'll have a 9-hour call out searching for a plane or a boat in distress, find nothing, all them man hours and deployed and all these agencies. And what can we say? We dare admit that it's something we don't understand, so we'll just put it down as false alarm with good intent. It's happening now. And it's still happening. And I think what I've done, and not just me, other people, by highlighting these sightings, I know I've switched on people within Lifeboat and Coast Guard who've not really thought about it before, not really thought about this false alarm with good intent, what it actually means when they've been out there for 5 hours searching for something and actually seeing these weird lights. And don't know where it'll start and where it'll stop, but I don't know. We just got to keep plowing through.
And I'll just add to that. I was talking a couple of years back. I was talking to a ex-trawler skipper who broached this subject on, and yes, they had seen these lights, but they don't go into the ship's log.
Yeah.
Okay, so which is fascinating, because you're thinking, well, oh dear.
No, it's.
Is you ready?
Quick reef.
Hi.
Well, then off you go. 5 minutes. Sorry.
No. It's all good. It's all good.
She's got to see her dad, hasn't she?
Yeah. So
I was just saying, Dean, I had a report from an ex-trawler skipper who said, obviously, when they've been out fishing up near Iceland or wherever, they've seen all these lights in the sky, but they were told not to enter those into the ship's log.
Wow. I think we're at a tipping point. I feel we're at a tipping point. What I mean by that is with all the cameras that are about today, you'll have skeptics will say, oh well, with so many cameras around these today, why haven't we got more pictures? I will try not to go on a tangent here, but the answer I would usually give is, okay, imagine you're driving along and for 2 or 3 seconds you see something that looks like a gorilla walking upright, but it's a hell of a lot big. The first thing comes to your mind certainly is that I need to take a picture. All that's probably going through your mind is, OF, what the heck is that? And it's gone. It's disappeared. However, I think there are people out there that will be sensible about it, and the first thing to do is reach for a camera, especially the younger generations. As we all know, the amount of videos I've seen these days where they're filming, I'm thinking you shouldn't be filming, you should be helping there, or you should be doing something else other than film. But anyway, cameras get whipped out. So coming back from that tangent, I think we're at the tipping point now where governments are struggling to keep it contained, hence why that Nimitz report came out, hence why we're starting to see more, because I think it's a good thing a lot of the public know where this BS goes on, they're not going to take it anymore.
Yeah, I would agree. We aren't going into any detail, and I'd probably get, I don't know, ragged about verbally for not going into any detail, but I'm not going to do. I thought about it today. Probably Rick prompted it. Are you frightened of going too far? I have got information. I don't mean it's earth-shattering information, but I've got information that's potentially embarrassing and damaging for certain bodies in authority. Let's put it that way. I really have. I've got some monstrous information regarding a trawler that sank. That I wish I didn't know it. And so yeah, I have.
Weighs heavy on your mind.
I have been told things that I can't talk. I can't. I will eventually talk about it, and there will be a reason why I'll talk about it. It'll be when there'll be a time when I can. But yeah, there's a few things that I'm really cagey about speaking about. But anyway, that's rambling, aren't I?
You've got to be, Paul. You've got to be like that, because the thing is, especially with yourself, Paul, I'm sure as all people listening will understand, it goes back to the old adage about trust. You know, it takes years to build up trust, but it only takes a second to lose it forever. And with witnesses, you've got to do exactly as they say, because it only takes that one person to say, well, I told him this and he didn't, he told someone else.
Yeah.
No one will come to you. No one will come to you.
You're absolutely spot on. I mean, the thing with the trawler, all I will say is that it would be damaging for the person who told me, because they've sat on this information for a lot of years and trusted me and told me. And they're old now. So when I say one day I will talk about it, you're probably guessing when that time will be. So
it's a privilege. It's a privilege. They've told you that, so it's a privilege you got to respect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do you think I got time to squeeze a couple more
questions?
Yeah,
please do. Let's get them in. And
I'm trying to get that. Yeah, Ian Slater is asking Paul, did the sighting of the grey vehicle
the black
with
vehicle.
detection? With detection gear continue, or did it coincide with any sightings at that time?
Right. So I've got to jump on board with this. Are we talking about the black Range Rover Vogue or the vehicles with the big dishes on? That was 2017. And it was 2019 Range Rover Vogue, and no, it didn't really. It was just unnerving for me and Bob. But as regards the vehicles with the big dishes on that were positioned on cliff tops, positioned at Sledmere, which just happened to be in the location where, very close to where I got a phone call whilst on the cliff tops, and the guy telling me his daughter had just seen a UFO. Then, as a matter of fact, he told me that this unusual vehicle parked in this field. And so, yes, the vehicles with the detection gear on did coincide with all the unexplained phenomena that were happening in 2017, but that included the sheep tragedies, and I hate saying the other word, but and the UFO sightings, the MIB, the guys in the hazmat suits that were on the base, everything coincided with those vehicles.
Those pictures you showed me, I think I mentioned it to you, Paul, that I won't say how or where, but I spoke to someone a couple of days ago, I think I told you, Paul, didn't I? And the person that I was speaking to showed me vehicles identical to the pictures you showed me, or near identical.
Yeah.
And these were for jamming signals. They weren't sending or receiving, they were jamming signals, and they could also be used to jam phones from working. And I know there's been lots of reports coming where people have gone to take a photo and their phone stops working, or their NVG stopped working, or anything like that. And I find it quite interesting that if they had jammers there, why? What do you jam?
That's correct. And what's interesting, when you said that to me, and I didn't know we'd touch on this today. I know we only spoke about it the other day. Peter, one of witnesses who gave me information in first place, were walking Cliff Lane 6 in the morning, because he always walked it early or late, depending on his work pattern. The vehicles and the guys in the white suits were up on the old RAF base. And he said, that real broad Yorkshire, I did what they said. He says, I got my phone, held it up, tried to take a picture, and people might have heard me say it before. He says, my phone just went like an old TV, sort of static. He says, and then all of a sudden, it's just went, and it's blank. So what you've just said then is kind of interesting. And what the people would be doing up on the base at that time in the morning, I don't know, in white suits. There were only 3.
Is this the base that's no longer active, Paul? Or is this
it's inactive, and it's out of bounds for everybody, and I can't stress that enough.
That's really interesting.
But, I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah, very.
Jay is asking, have there been any strange sightings closer than Danes Dyke towards Bridlington, Paul?
Oh, yeah, lots of sightings in and around Bridlington. yeah, without a doubt. And one sort of delve into Bridlington Free Press Archive, and you'll find sightings around the town. And I tell you what, a lot of them are out at sea, but behind me is Bridlington Promenade, probably 200 yards away. So you've got people walking promenade. I'll tell you what's interesting that's cropped up over many decades, people claiming to have seen something sort of oval shaped, casting a shadow in the bay in daytime, flying, but they can't see it. But they can see the shadow and on the surface of the water. I suppose we can debate that. Is it something really dark below the water travelling?
Yeah.
Or is it, do you know what I mean? But they seem to think it's on surface at water. And a shadow, so as though something's above, but they can't see anything. I mean, Bob, I've got a guy to talk to that Bob's connected, Bob's Brown's friend, and I found the report years ago in Bridlington Archive, and just so happens that Bob knows the guy, so he's fixed it up for me to speak to him, and he was fishing on harbour, and he saw the same thing, and just leaving a complete black shadow on water, just travelled up the coast and past him.
Wow.
There's a chance that that's military technology, that's some kind of cloaking, I don't know, but fascinating.
Yes.
I've got a question from Lee Roscoe. Paul, well, first of all, he's saying, thanks for your time tonight, Dean.
You're welcome.
Which
Good
is
to
great,
see you.
yeah.
Nice to see you in here.
And I'll add to that and say Dean's made a great contribution to tonight's discussions, and I'm sure Paul will agree.
I will, and just before you wrap this up, Les, because we're not going to touch on it tonight, Dean, are we? But I'm hoping at some point you feel like you will come in and tell us about your experience.
I will definitely come in, and I've told you my reasons, Paul. You know, I'm not going to go on there because it's quite long-winded.
Yeah, we ain't got time anyway, so...
Yeah, but yes, I will definitely come into it, and just so people know, so people tune in, they might see my name and go, I'm not going to that. But just to give them a hint, I've been told that it was a dog man, I've been told it was this, that. Myself, I haven't got a clue what it was. It didn't fit a lot of these things, but it made my blood run cold. I'll tell you how much, and he was a couple of inches away from me. I was sat in my car and he was right next to me. Yeah. And I'll leave it.
Can't wait to hear that one, Dean. Yeah. And just to, so the question actually from Lee was, and thanks for the question, Lee, I guess it's to me and you, Paul, what inspired you to make Wolflands? Well, I'll just start with that from my point of view. What inspired me was these people who come forward with these accounts. These are very personal stories, and in a lot of instances it's took them years to actually come out with a story, to actually talk about the story. And I know Dean's nodding his head and he can vouch for that because he's gone through the similar experiences. So it's really from that point of view, I think, that these stories need to be told.
Yeah, I would agree. I could only echo that, really, Les. You know, apart from first book, I got a couple of stories whilst researching it about the Flixton werewolf, and from there it kind of snowballed. People were telling me, and I'll keep it brief, people were telling me, realised that I weren't laughing at them and just sort of checking my head and saying, what you're telling me you've seen. But, you know, because it's the same thing that I keep repeating. None of these witnesses know each other. None of them have got anything to gain except ridicule from vast populace out there for claiming to have seen something what you can only describe as a werewolf or a dog man, depending on what you want to term it as, but they're not all lying. So yeah, that's the driving force for Wolflands, and we put these witnesses over in a good light. We've been working on it today, myself and Les. We're really close. I'm always saying we're really close, but it's that close. It's probably going to have its music added on Sunday. Am I right, Les?
Yes, we've set a goal. Yeah, so yes.
And so we're close. Yeah, we've got to.
And on that note, gentlemen, I am going to wrap the show up, and I've got to say from me, Dean, great contribution as always, because we have talked before in other scenarios, and the offer extends if you want to come on and tell your story.
Definitely.
In a week, not in a week, but whenever you feel, the need to.
Could I just do one thing, if you don't mind? Very briefly, and I'll keep it super brief. I'm just putting this up. I want you to see, because someone commented early on, I think it was along the lines of that I was making this up. Just so people see, that is when I was on in London, and that, you'll see me somewhere on here. There we go. And that's
Wow.
do entries into planes and stuff like that. And
Yeah. It's so easy to make these sweeping statements, Dean, and discredit somebody. I know, because I've seen, you've shown me lots of stuff in past about what you've been involved in. But thanks for doing that and for your own peace of mind, because it validates what you're saying and just, I won't say deflates the comment. I mean, people are allowed to comment, but come on, just be fair with somebody, if you know what I mean, and half decent.
I got no problem with people questioning it, Paul. No problem at all. But the only problem I have is if someone doesn't question it and they make an assumption.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Then,
make a
thank you,
statement,
guys.
you looked into it. Anyway, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
I've loved being on here, gents. It's been great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. It just leaves me then to wrap the show up, and thank you everybody for coming on to tonight's stream. And I've got to say, great questions tonight from everybody in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't get through all the questions. I've got to thank Sky for moderating tonight. I've got to thank Dean, and I've got to thank Paul. So, and it's from me, Les. Good night.